What is going on, guys? My name is Will. I am from Ghost Hack, and if you are a producer who does not use loops, odds are you still have a fairly large loop library just sitting on your computer doing nothing. Well, today I'm going to show you how you can take those loops, any kind of loops, and implement them in fun and creative, new, unique ways into your music. Now, almost all producers like samples. Many producers enjoy plugin presets, but there is a lot of talk about using loops in the producer community. As Diplo famously said, it's not where you get the sounds, it's what you do with them. But some people disagree and they feel weird just throwing their loops into their projects. They feel unoriginal. And I suppose what they are trying to avoid is people just dragging in loops. Let's see, there's some drums, there's some basses, and then they have a banger. Now, if you are a beginner, that definitely is a fun way to learn. However, some of you crave a little more than just throwing a loop in there. So I'm going to show you different ways of using them more creatively. So the first thing I'm going to start with is this little melodic loop. It gets a little bigger there at the end. What I'm going to do real quick is I'm just going to quickly throw some drums under it, and then I'm going to, make some changes to the loop, make some edits, and show you some of the interesting things you can do. Now, this does actually bring me to the first use of loops, which I actually use all the time, is just placeholders. Like, I just have this little house drum beat here. It has some Foley over it. It's a little weird and unique, but I'm just going to use this as a placeholder and just throw that under there because right now I'm not focusing on the drums, I'm focusing on something else. First thing I can do is throw a sidechain on it with this gross beat. So it mixes it in a little better. And now I can do a couple of different things. One thing I like to do, especially on sounds like these, this does not sound like a main sound. This definitely sounds more like a background sound, this kind of ARP. So what I like to do is filter it, definitely. And a bandpass is a really interesting way to get cool effects out of stuff like this. And this is just coming from me listening to it and imagining what kind of creative things I can do with it. You really should go into these effects and really mess around with stuff. Like, for example, I have a really tight bandpass here, and I really like it when it does this. So I could easily create a little automation for this. Now, not only do I have an interesting ARP that I can kind of use in the background and not a lot of people will, recognize or notice immediately, I now have inspiration for more ideas on a track. Just by listening to that, I could think of a plethora of things that I could put over this, ways that I can transition. I have a whole vibe in my head right now just by listening to a loop. So loops are very good for inspiration, at least, even if you don't use them much in your music. Another thing you could do is, instead of filtering, you could try like a phaser or a flanger. These seem to have cool results, and they might sound something like this. Or maybe even this formant filter, that could be fun. And you could even try like a mix of any of those to see how they layer together. Or perhaps you could even slow it down using the gross beat again. Now I just got a whole nother vibe from that. So that's one way to kind of just mess around and edit loops, but just keeping them straight, just adding effects, Now I just touched a little bit on gross beat there and used it for a couple of kind of basic things that could be done outside of gross beat. But I do want to say that gross beat is a really awesome glitch plugin to use on loops. I use it on loops all the time. And you can use any glitch plugin, like you can use Effectrix, you can use Glitch 2. There's a lot of different ways you can, mess up your loops. But messing up your loops with glitch plugins is something something I definitely recommend because you can get whole different kind of vibes and things from it. For example, I have this vocal loop right here. And it sounds pretty cool. It's got a cool melody, but if I can like switch things up, I can kind of jump between spots and manipulate this wave using gross beat right here. I can turn this on, and right here, this is just jumping through the audio wave, and you can hear I have a completely different melody. This is just one of the presets. This is basic 9, and you can just click that. It starts on empty, click basic 9, and you open it up and you have a whole different thing. Now you have a different rhythm of these slices, and I wish I could see like an animation of this thing jumping back and forth because it would be really fun to look at. But this is very simple. Why stop there? I can add something else on top of it. In fact, I can add this other little preset, basic 10, and this is just a little slide down in pitch to make it a little more interesting. And I actually used this combination in creating the vocal loop that came with it right here. So you can use that kind of glitch for easy variations and all new rhythms. Next up, let's say you just have a basic drum beat. For this purpose, I'm just using loops to make it quick, but it sounds a little something like this. Some insane drum programming there, I know. Now I've used this next technique a lot, and this is taking like hi-hat or even percussion loops. This works good on percussion loops, and throwing them in here, but chopping them up and only taking bits and pieces. So let's say I have these 2 hi-hat loops I want to use. Here's the first one. Here's this one. And I want to use both of these in this track. However, they're different tempos. First off, is something that is wrong. I have this one at 150 and this one at 140. Now this one at 140 works great because the original drums are at 140. However, if I want to change this is actually a good opportunity to stretch out this loop. So what I want to do is just time stretch this loop so it fits the bar. However, I do not want to resample it to this tempo. What I want to actually do is throw it on E2 transient, and this is going to kind of mess things up. It's going to make it sound a little weird. You have some weird artifacts in there that I actually really like. And if we wanted to, we could actually do the same thing to this one. All I would have to do is maybe pitch it up 1 semitone and then turn on, let's just do stretch this time. You hear how it's kind of sliding in those fast moments? That sounds really good. And you can't get that out of MIDI. You have to bounce something to audio and then use that in order to get that effect. So what I did here is I laid down both of the hi-hat loops. I'm going to pan one slightly to the right at maybe 40%, and I'm going to pan the other one slightly to the left, also at around 40%. So now we have this right here, which sounds all right. I think there's too much hi-hat action going on. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to take the good parts. See, I like this part. Maybe I can cut it here. I like these speedy parts. These speedy parts are the cool parts. And with this one, it's all very similar. I think I'm actually going to just make random chops. I'm just going to chop it here, here, here. And this is where it can kind of get interesting, where you're just eyeballing it. You're not really doing anything special in particular. Now all I have to do is just arrange things in such a way that I have a new hi-hat loop. So essentially what we have here is just a mix of the 2 hi-hat loops that have been stretched and moved around. And you can see we made it a little crazier at the end by adding all the layers. So that's a fun way to use hi-hat and percussion loops, and I also recommend that you mess around using those glitch plugins on these as well. Lastly, I want to talk about bass loops, and I'm mainly referring to like dubstep-ish bass loops. Like this is our dubstep sound arsenal right here, and we have a lot of bass one-shots. And we have included with this pack a lot of bass loops made from the bass one-shots. And all of these loops contain just different variations and patterns of the bass hits. Now a lot of these loops are ready to just kind of throw into a track, such as this one. However, what I want to focus on is not the pattern specifically that I have it in, it's more the different basses that I chose. So I have a lot of different basses here, and I think some of these choices are interesting and they go together pretty well. Like we have that weird stuttering bass and then this front bass right here. Now this is not a particularly complex moment going on, especially when you take in some of these other ones that are a little more complex. But this is definitely a potential kind of fill. Like if I'm looking for a spot in a track and I'm like, man, I don't know what I should be putting here in this spot of my dubstep song. A lot of times I will go through, you know, loops and I'll try to find some cool spots where I'm like, oh, this right here, this kind of, even though it's only a piece of the loop, I think it's going to work kind of well in what I'm doing. And whether that's a layer or I keep it as the main bit or I just take a sound from it or inspiration, it doesn't matter much. The point is I have put that loop to good use. Now, as I said before, there are more complex loops in here. Where I actually did use a lot of glitch plugins and I really messed this up. And now this is even better to just find the cool spots. So I can just make this small and then I can put it wherever in my track I want. And then I can listen through and try to find a cool bit. That's cool. I could use that as a glitchy bit. That beginning is nice. That's also useful. You can just take bits and pieces and you can throw them in and try to make new patterns from them, get inspiration, or add it to your track immediately. So as we have seen, there are definitely a lot more uses for loops, any kind of loops, than just throwing them immediately on top of your project and expecting perfection. A lot of those loops that are just sitting on your drive, not getting used, probably have a lot of inspiration that is put into them, and you can definitely take out that inspiration and utilize it in your track in different ways. So thank you guys so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed the video. If you did, you can leave a thumbs up. Also, you can subscribe to get more videos like this. So thank you guys for all the support, and I will see you in the next video. Happy producing.